Phew! Oh my gosh, Kant is really abstract and complex. This is the most conceptually difficult stuff we'll cover. You are doing great. Keep hanging in there. We're going to go over an example so that you can see a bit more clearly what Kant is talking about. You'll go over 3 examples in your reading homework, but I'll cover the first one for you here because otherwise it's very hard to grasp what Kant is getting at. His first example is of someone who finds themselves in very difficult financial circumstances, and that person could really use a loan. But they strongly suspect that they won't be able to pay back the money. And the thing about a loan is, the loaner wants their money back or they won't give you the loan. So this person in our example is very tempted to lie and say that they can pay back the loan. But they have a sense of duty and want to be a good person. So they ask themselves, is it morally permissible for me to falsely claim that I can repay this loan in order to get myself out of this circumstance? Let's take a look at it using the categorical imperative. And first we'll review the general rule. How do you find out if the individual action you're considering is in accord with the law of reason? That is, could it be a rule that held over all rational agents? And first, you have to explicitly lay out the action you're considering taking. What specific action are you planning on? What are you trying to achieve with the action? And what is your reason for doing it? That's called your maxim. Then, you imagine a world in which every rational agent had to take your action if they were in the same circumstances. It wouldn't even be a choice. Just like you don't make a choice to follow the laws of physics when you wake up in the morning. It would just automatically happen like a law of nature, like a law of physics, that all other rational agents did take your action. Would such a thing even be possible? If not, then you can't, under any circumstances, take that action. If it would be possible, then you further ask whether you could rationally will to create that world. Oftentimes, it would be theoretically possible for your maxim to function in a world where everyone else also undertook the same maxim. But that world will create lots of barriers to future maxims that you might will. We'll think about an example later of a world in which no one helps anyone else. You could have such a world, but imagine how many times you will have actions you want to take and can't because people are basically physically incapable of helping one another. If your maxim could be universal law, but it would be irrational to make it universal law, then you have an imperfect duty not to take the action. Having an imperfect duty means that you can sometimes take the action, but not always. If you could rationally will to create a world in which your maxim became universal law, then your action is fine. So for our example, step 1 is to formulate your maxim. You need to figure out the action you're proposing to take, what you want to accomplish with your action, and the motivation behind the maxim. What's our action in this case? We're proposing to lie about being able to repay a loan. What do we want to accomplish? We want to secure a loan to get ourselves out of financial trouble. And what's our underlying motivation? Self-preservation. Kant calls it love of the self. Now, imagine what would happen if our maxim was to become a universal law of nature. How does this work? We basically imagine a parallel universe. This parallel universe is exactly the same as our universe, except that in the parallel universe, every other person lies whenever they need money, but know they can't pay it back. Then we ask ourselves, can our maxim function in a world where it's become a universal law of nature? Well, what is the first thing that will happen in the new imaginary universe? There won't be such a thing as loans anymore. The very idea of a loan depends on the fact that it's rational to gamble that the person getting the loan will pay it back. But in our new universe, everyone's lying and not repaying loans, so no one will give out loans. The loan is over as a practice in our new universe. Therefore, our maxim runs into a fundamental contradiction with itself. Lying about a loan fundamentally depends on the fact that everyone else doesn't lie, so it creates the trust necessary for our lie to work. Once everyone's lying, no one can lie successfully because there's no trust to make the lie function. So lying fails at step 3. It is not logically possible for it to function as a universal law that holds over all rational agents. That means that you have a perfect duty not to lie. You can never take that action. No exceptions. Obviously, you can take that action. Kant cannot rise up out of his grave and stop you from doing it, but you can't ethically take that action. We will go over 2 examples where the maxim fails at step 4 for your next reading assignment, but I wanted to give you an example right away because it helps pull together the more abstract stuff when you see it in action. We should note carefully that Kant is not saying that you should do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Remember that we cannot pay attention to what you want. He's also not saying that you should imagine what you think other people would do in your situation. The move you're making in the imagination exercise is to try to determine whether your proposed action accords with the law of reason. That is, could it be universally applicable for all rational agents? So you're imagining what would happen if everyone had to do exactly what you're planning on doing. If it's logically possible, and if it would be rational for you to will it, then your action is in accord with duty, and it is ethical for you to do it. So that is an example of the categorical imperative, the rule that is without exception, in action. Phew! You did it! You got through the hardest part. In our next class, we'll review, we'll go over your questions, we'll keep looking at examples and go over a different way of thinking about and deriving the categorical imperative. I will see you soon. Thanks.